what I want to talk to you about here is how I record vocals. Obviously, I've got very expensive mics. I've got a U47. Also, I'm going to go over here to a Lewitt, an inexpensive $300 microphone. It's really about getting a good, clean signal. This is an inexpensive $300 condenser microphone. Believe it or not, you can get a result just as good with this as you can with this if you do it smartly. So here I am, I'm on the U47. It's a very expensive mic. I've got two sets of compressors going here. So I'm going into the 165, a DBX up there. That's the top of those two compressors. So let's just sing for a second. Ba da da ba. As you can see, I'm actually hitting too hard, so it clipped. Let's go over to the compressor over here. I'm adjusting the threshold quite dramatically back. 1, 1, 1, 1. It's starting to compress. If you look to the VU meter here, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. A little bit of compression's coming in, but it's still quite hot. So let's click down. 1, 1, 1, 1. So what I've done is I've brought the mic pre down a click, and now I'm bringing this down even more. 1, 1, 1. There you go. Now it's starting to compress. 1, 1. Now the second compressor is the 1176 underneath. 1, 1. Which isn't doing anything at the moment. So let's bring it in just a little bit. A little crunchy. You heard that? 1, 1. One, 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 one. So I'm going to bring the output up a little bit. 1. Still not doing much compression. Let's take the output from this up. 1, 1, 1, 1. Stop. There we go. 1, 1. So now I've got two sets of compression going. I'm actually going to bring this down slightly. Now, what's going on is that first compressor is set pretty gently. So it can compress all the time, but it's not a huge amount of compression, usually about 3 to 1. 3 to 1 means it takes 3 dB going over the threshold to only allow 1 dB through. So that's set to 3 to 1. The one below is set 20 to 1, which means it has to go 20 dB over the threshold to let 1 dB through. So now what should happen is ba 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 da ba ba ba. The second compressor should only really come in on the more aggressive stuff that the first one can't reach. But that combination of compressors is pretty classic. The 165 or 160 VU, quite famous, going into an 1176. One doing gentle, one doing more aggressive. I've heard people use it round the other way. Honestly, James Seno, Jack Douglas, all the guys I learned from, Dave Jordan, oh, the list is massive. What this allows you to do is it clamps down the signal, 1, and still sounds forward. It's a great way to record vocals, but it's not a financially easy thing to do, let's be honest. So now I'm going over to the Lewitt, and this Lewitt is just going into the Audient interface. And really, the only secret here is to not clip it. Just don't clip it, because you can put the EQ and compression on afterwards. I've just got a simple pop screen. You could probably use this one, but for the sake of argument, we just put this over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's clear. It's $300. Maybe a bit more level. 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a bit of P's on there. I would probably take this pop screen and put it up here. But the reality is that you can do all kinds of things. There's lots of DAWs now where you can sing through plugins. And if you've got a very dense mix, you might want to do that. But obviously, one of the beauties is you can use this and you can put a plugin on afterwards. So for instance, if I just go and grab a generic plugin, and what I like about this is it's just a one-size-fits-all. It's really easy and simple to use. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It does the job. It really does the job. Now, depending on the latency of your system and your DAW, you may or may not have issues. But essentially, what we've got here is just a simple way of doing it. Do not let it clip. What all this compression and these mic pre's and all this stuff is, they do add color. But now with a clean mic like this Lewitt here, you can add all the color afterwards. If you want to distort it a little bit, if you want to put a tape emulation on, this is the beauty of the modern digital world. So as much as we love these really expensive pieces of equipment, cut yourself a break. With $300, a $300 interface, you know, $600-700 worth of gear, a decent pair of headphones, you're making music, and you're making music that sound world class. There is a lot of examples of great songs that are smash hits that were recorded on inexpensive equipment. It's, you know, you hear it all the time. It's the ear, not the gear. It really is. So what I want to do now is show you how I mix just using plugins. Here is my basic way that I get a vocal to cut. So in solo, this is Steve Magora singing.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up your sticks and your stones.
Let's put the piano in so you can hear it against the piano.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up your sticks and your stones.
Steve's a fairly even singer. I may or may not record with compression with him. A lot of the mic demos we do, we don't use any compression. What I would suggest when I listen to this is I just want it to cut a little bit more. So let's listen to it in the track with everything playing.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up your sticks and your stones.
But there's a catch-22 because I want it to be brighter. But there's also already, load up, the S's are getting a little bit out of control. And I know this is a really sore point for a lot of people when they mix. If you see here, this is the first EQ. I'm actually going to turn off the boost here. First thing I've done here is high passed it. So what does that mean? It means I'm getting rid of low end, unnecessary low end.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up
Put it back in.
your sticks and your stones.
So you're probably saying, I didn't hear much. There's not really a difference, Warren. Exactly. There isn't. There's barely any difference at all. What we're doing when we high pass is getting rid of like the possibility of like some low end rumble and stuff. There's barely any in there. And it's more importantly, it's to point out the fact that even if there was in there, it's irrelevant. It's not necessary for his vocal. It's not like he's Barry White and it's all the way down here and you take off the low end and there's no more Barry White. He's not like that. I'm going to make this really dumb because I really want to show you this. So I'm actually going to I'm going to grab Stephen Slate's plugin. What I like about this, the Infinite EQ, it's also got a spectrum analyzer.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up.
So you see that all of the information is about 100, more like 150 hertz and above. You hear a little bit of low lows in there. So if I now, just do this and come up to about, say, 150 here.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up your sticks and your stones.
There's a little bit of that puh on the pickup. Have a look at this and listen, and you'll hear the P.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up.
But you see, the P happened here, which is at 120 hertz, and we've high-passed it away a little bit, and that's good because you don't want this poof, poof, which you're probably blowing your head off there when I just did it. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Now let's keep listening.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up your sticks and your stones.
You can see and hear it's a 3 to 5K area, which is giving that sticks and your stones. So why don't we do this? Why don't we... And I'm going to show you lots of different ways of doing this. Why don't we get a de-esser first? So this is the stock one that comes with Pro Tools, whatever your DAW is. So let's go to that sort of 3-ish area. What I like about this particular one is I can do high pass only.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up your sticks and your stones.
So I can go.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up and pigeons and pigeons and pigeons and pigeons and pigeons.
Now I can bring
and pigeons and and pigeons and pigeons
We're off.
and pigeons and pigeons and pigeons questions and pick up questions 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 honey, load up your questions.
I mean, you really heard it and saw it. I don't mind you looking at the visuals. Trust me, we shouldn't be looking at music, but these are visual cues, so it's okay to see things. And you could see it worked really well on that S. Now, what I like about it is like that's obviously a pretty ridiculous area. So I've got the de-esser first. Now we've got the EQ where we've rolled off, and we can get in and just, you know, let's just go in there and maybe grab some high end and boost it. So what I'm doing is I'm going to like 7 or 8K. Now I'm brightening the overall vocal, but I'm not brightening the 3 to 5K area that dramatically.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up your sticks and your stones.
Now there is a second area at about 7K that needs de-essing. So what we could do is we could double up the de-esser like this. And we can go to about 7K. Let's go to that same.
Up your questions, 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 questions.
So,
honey, load up your questions and pick up.
cool. So now we have 2 de-essers going, and I'm not afraid to do that. One at that 3, it's kind of 3 to 5K area, and one at about that 7K. And we've brightened the vocal. Well, Warren, you just de-essed it and now you've brightened it. Yeah, exactly. It means that I can boost it knowing that I'm not bringing up ugly frequencies. So let's hear a sort of before and after. So with no plugins on it.
Honey, load up your questions.
And there's an after.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up your sticks and your stones.
Now, if anything, he might get a little bit lispy. Maybe we've overdone it. What I will do now is that we can just back it off just a little bit. So let's just bring that range down.
Honey, load up your questions and pick up your... Honey, load up your questions and pick up...
Just go into the area.
Your questions, 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 your questions. Honey, load up your questions and pick up your sticks and your stones.
Next thing, don't be afraid to automate things. That particular questions, that S is pretty dramatic. I mean, again, I am going to say, look, it's massive. It is as loud as any other part of it. I mean, that's dramatic. Now, in Pro Tools, if you use Pro Tools, you can use clip gain. So I can just separate that section and I can just turn it down. And I have no problem with doing this. You can go through a whole vocal and do that in a couple of minutes. See now?
Up your questions and pick up your sticks and your stones.
Because the sticks and the stones there is not bad at all. What I want to talk about now is when you want to spend some money. Okay, so if you want to spend some money, I would use Soothe 2. And I do not make a single dollar from this. I just love this plugin. So you can do a lot of the things that you're doing here, or you can choose to let the plugin do it. So if we just turn off, for instance, the de-essing, and we take that section, and we can even get rid of the edit we just did. Let's have a listen now.
Honey, load up your questions. Honey, load up your questions.
I mean, look what it's going on. This is just on a default setting, and it's a really smart plugin. And what it's doing is like you see it going in that 3K, 4K area where we pulled out, and that's 7K, and it's just doing it automatically. Look.
Honey, load up your questions. Honey, load up your questions.
And what's interesting about it is you can set it. You can have the depth stronger or weaker. It's not a cheap plugin. It's like $150, $200. But it is a godsend. And there's a reason why when you watch our channel, you have Daryl Thorpe, you have Eric Valentine, you have me, you have 100 different producers and engineers and mixers saying that they love this plugin. Oak Sound's a small company. They make 2 or 3 different plugins. This is a really, really great tool for vocal mixing because just generically turning it on and using it on its default setting, it does a lot of the work. It gets rid of the harshness of the vocal quite dramatically. I can now get another EQ afterwards and brighten it. So have a listen now.
Honey, load up your questions. Honey, load up your questions. Honey, load up your questions.
Now it's turned all of those things off.
Honey, load up your questions. Honey, load up your questions.
Now those things back on.
Honey, load up your questions.
It's miraculous. It's an incredibly good plugin. And if I want this to be a modern sounding record, I will use Soothe. It is very radio friendly. It really is. It gives you that same kind of feel. And if you're in a situation where you're maybe using a very cheap mic or inexpensive gear, and you might be adding some harsh frequencies to it, you can spend a lot of time. You can use a multiband compressor. You can DS and look for all of the areas like we did. Or quite frankly, you could stick Soothe on it. So highly, highly recommend that plugin.